When detectives finished combing through the cellar beneath the cabin, their attention shifted to something far more important. Who built this room and why? The name tied to the cabin's ownership wasn't familiar to investigators. No criminal record, no previous charges, no history of violence. His name was Elias Northwood, a quiet, middle-aged maintenance worker from a nearby town, known to most only as the man who fixed lights on Main Street every December. He blended into Christmas. He worked inside Christmas. Nobody suspected him. But the deeper investigators went into Elias Northwood's life, the stranger the picture became. Christmas Eve, 10:14 p.m. The storm over Ridgeway exploded into a full whiteout. Winds cut across the streets like knives, burying roads, erasing tracks, swallowing sound. And somewhere inside that blizzard, the Santa killer was still moving. Police knew one thing. If they lost him in this storm, they might lose him forever. Snow hammered the ground faster than plows could clear it. Shops were locked. Buses were stranded. Families were ordered to stay inside. But officers, they pushed deeper into the storm. One detective later said, "It felt like chasing a ghost in a snow globe." At 11:03 p.m., a 999 call cut through the static. A witness reported a man in a ripped Santa coat limping across the old North Line Bridge, a bridge already half collapsed and nearly invisible under the pounding snow. Units were dispatched immediately. Visibility less than 10 feet. Wind speed over 40 miles per hour. Every footstep felt like walking into darkness. When officers reached the bridge, they found only two things: a trail of blood, frozen into the metal railing, and a single glove, red, soaked through, still warm. The storm was turning the evidence to ice, and the Santa killer was nowhere in sight. But the direction of the blood trail pointed one way, into the woods, into the heart of the storm. By midnight, the forest was a maze of shifting white. Branches snapped, wind howled, radio signals died. The only thing officers could hear was their own breathing, and the creak of snow settling under something large moving ahead of them. Thermal drones couldn't penetrate the storm. K-9 units struggled to scent anything in the freezing air. But then, a faint light appeared between the trees, a lantern, swaying, moving slowly. Officers approached, weapons drawn, but the light wasn't held by the killer. It was tied to a tree branch, swinging in the wind. Another taunt. Pinned to the trunk was a scrap of Santa fabric with 3 words carved into the bark. "Too slow again." Fresh tracks, boots, large, erratic, cut through the snow towards the old Ridgeway train tunnel. A tunnel sealed off years ago. A tunnel long enough and deep enough for a man to disappear in forever. The blizzard swallowed the sound of sirens as officers sprinted toward it. By the time they reached the entrance, only darkness remained. And somewhere inside that tunnel, someone breathed, soft, controlled, waiting. The Ridgeway train tunnel had been sealed for nearly 15 years. It stretched more than half a mile beneath frozen ground, carved through rock and reinforced with rusting steel beams. No lighting, no power, no cell signal. It was the kind of place where sound disappeared, and people did too. When officers reached the entrance, snow was already piling up against the collapsed gate. The wind screamed through the opening like something alive. Inside, the darkness was absolute.
You can feel it pull the sound right out of the air.
Like the place is swallowing it.
Keep your light moving. Eyes up.
Come on, you see that?
Police hesitated only briefly. Flashlights cut narrow paths through the black as officers stepped inside, boots splashing through shallow ice water. The temperature dropped instantly. Breath fogged the air. Radio contact became intermittent. The tunnel walls showed signs of recent disturbance. Fresh scrape marks, flecks of red fabric caught on protruding bolts. Boot prints dragged sideways as if the person walking had begun to stumble. The Santa killer was injured, but he was still moving. Halfway down the tunnel, the trail stopped. No footprints, no blood, nothing. Just silence. Officers froze. The only sound was dripping water echoing endlessly ahead and behind them. Every step forward felt exposed. Then one officer noticed something small, almost missed in the darkness. A Christmas bell hung from a cable above head height. It swayed gently, ringing softly whenever the wind pushed through the tunnel. Another signal, another message. He wanted them to know he had been there, and that he had time. At 12:41 a.m., everything changed. A low rumble rolled through the tunnel floor. Snow and ice dislodged above the entrance. Triggered by the storm and weakened supports, the rear exit collapsed. The tunnel sealed itself. Officers were now trapped inside with the man they were hunting. Command ordered an immediate withdrawal toward the far end, the emergency maintenance shaft that surfaced near the old river line. But as police moved forward, they found something else. A fire extinguisher, emptied. Powder coated the ground, masking footprints. Visibility dropped to nothing. The Santa killer had planned this. At the edge of the extinguisher cloud, one officer's flashlight caught movement. A red shape, barely visible. A man standing still, watching. For just a second, the beam illuminated his face, pale, exhausted, eyes sunken, Santa hat hanging loose from his head. Then the light flicked away, and he was gone. The emergency shaft opened above a frozen riverbank, nearly hidden by snowdrifts. Police emerged one by one into the storm, scanning the tree line, weapons raised. Then they saw him, collapsed near the river's edge. The Santa killer lay half submerged in snow, one leg twisted unnaturally, blood soaking through the red fabric. He hadn't made it across the ice. Hypothermia had slowed him. The injury had finished the rest. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. As officers cuffed him, the wind tore the Santa hat from his head and sent it skidding across the ice, spinning, until it stopped at the river's edge, red against white. At 1:06 a.m. on Christmas Day, the man later identified as Elias Northwood was officially in custody. No shots fired, no final confrontation, just exhaustion, cold, and the quiet end of a plan that had almost succeeded. Behind him, the blizzard continued to fall, erasing tracks, burying evidence, sealing the tunnel once more. But this time, it didn't protect him, it stopped him. When Elias Northwood was taken into custody, investigators believed the danger had passed. But stopping him physically was only part of the job. Understanding him was something else entirely. Because what police uncovered next revealed that the Santa killer was not driven by impulse, rage, or chaos. He was driven by structure and ritual. Psychological profiling revealed a man obsessed with order. Northwood lived minimally, no clutter, no decoration, no personal items left out. Every object in his possession had a place, and every place had a reason. This was not coincidence. Investigators learned that Northwood's childhood was defined by instability. After the Christmas Eve house fire that killed both his parents, he was passed between relatives in state care. Christmas never stopped coming, but for him, it always arrived carrying loss. Therapists reviewing his history later noted that he did not grieve outwardly. He organized his grief. He turned it into schedules, dates, lists, and eventually, rituals. To most people, Christmas represents warmth, family, and safety. To Northwood, it represented chaos disguised as joy. Firefighters had pulled him from the burning house just after midnight on Christmas Eve. He survived because he had been sent to bed early. His parents did not. From that night forward, December became the month when everything could collapse, even when it looked perfect from the outside. Years later, Northwood didn't try to avoid Christmas. He embedded himself inside it. Santa suits, charity work, holiday shifts, not to celebrate, but to control the narrative. If Christmas was going to take things from him, he would take control of Christmas. Psychologists were clear on one point. Northwood did not believe he was Santa. He believed Santa was a mask, a socially protected disguise that allowed him to move freely without suspicion. Santa was welcomed into spaces strangers normally weren't. He could stand near children without alarm. He could linger, wave, observe. The suit wasn't about fantasy, it was about access. The lists found in the cellar weren't merely operational tools. They were emotional regulation. Every name written down, every address circled, every schedule documented. It allowed Northwood to feel calm, in control. Investigators noticed that whenever a list was complete, his handwriting became neater, more precise. As the dates approached Christmas Eve, the writing tightened. Letters smaller, margins cleaner. The closer he came to action, the calmer he became. Contrary to initial assumptions, the blizzard didn't disrupt his plan. It reinforced it. Northwood believes snow erased accountability. Footprints vanished. Sounds were muffled. Witnesses stayed indoors. In his mind, winter wasn't an obstacle. It was cover. What he didn't account for was injury. The slip near the river fractured his ankle and damaged ligaments in his knee. For the first time, his body betrayed the plan his mind had built so carefully. That fracture did what years of restraint hadn't. It forced the timeline to collapse. During evaluation, Northwood showed no emotional response when confronted with the evidence. No anger, no tears, no panic. What unsettled clinicians most was his fixation on sequence. He repeatedly asked investigators one thing: how far did I get? Not who was hurt, not what happened next, only how much of the plan had unfolded. To him, failure wasn't moral, it was logistical. The official psychological report concluded Elias Northwood was not driven by sadism, not by revenge against individuals, not by delusion. He was driven by symbolic correction, an attempt to rewrite the meaning of Christmas, to strip it of warmth and replace it with silence. He didn't want recognition, he wanted completion, and that, experts say, is what made him dangerous. Before we continue, if you're finding this investigation informative, please take a moment to like the video. It helps this story reach more viewers. And if you want to follow this case through to its conclusion, along with more in-depth true crime documentaries, consider subscribing to the channel. Now, let's continue. Stopping Elias Northwood in the blizzard ended the immediate threat, but it did not end the investigation. Because for detectives, the most important question remained unanswered. How close had he come? The answer lay not in the storm, but in the evidence he left behind. The first critical break came from the vehicle abandoned near the tree line. Northwood's van was not random transport. It was a mobile staging area. Inside, forensic teams found a second Santa suit, cleaner and unused pre-packed gloves and boots in sealed bags, duct tape, rope, and plastic sheeting, a handwritten checklist taped to the dashboard. Each item was numbered. Each step had been rehearsed. Investigators determined the van was meant to be discarded after Christmas Eve, either burned or abandoned during the blizzard. It was never meant to be found. Inside the glove compartment was a small red notebook. This notebook became one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. Each page corresponded to a specific time window: 6:40 p.m., depart cabin 7:12 p.m., town center 8:05 p.m., first approach 9:30 p.m., movement window 11:45 p.m., relocation. There were no emotional notes, no personal reflections, only timing. It showed investigators that Northwood's plan wasn't impulsive. It was synchronized. And according to the final page, the plan was already behind schedule before police ever realized he was active. The hidden cellar beneath the cabin revealed the full scope of what had been prevented. Forensic cataloging took 3 days. Inside, teams documented multiple sets of restraint sedatives obtained illegally through forged prescriptions, sound-dampening materials lining the walls, a battery-powered radio scanner, printed weather forecasts marked in red. This was not a temporary hideout. It was a prepared environment, and it had been tested. Marks on the floor showed furniture had been moved repeatedly, rehearsals conducted in silence. Despite his attempt to remain invisible, Northwood had one weakness. He relied on public digital infrastructure. Traffic cameras captured his van circling specific streets weeks before Christmas. Public Wi-Fi logs placed his phone near homes later found on his list. Library computers showed searches for holiday parade crowd density, winter night sound travel, snowfall noise masking. He believed using public devices made him untraceable. Instead, it mapped his movements with precision. The blizzard nearly erased everything. Nearly. Blood found frozen into the bridge railing matched Northwood's DNA. Fibers from his suit were recovered from fencing near the woods. Boot impressions matched footwear found later in the van. One detail mattered most. The pattern showed hesitation. He had stopped, turned back, changed direction. The injury altered the plan, and that moment, that single misstep, collapsed the entire operation. Perhaps the most chilling evidence was also the simplest: the address list. Each home was visited by police. Every family was contacted. And as investigators spoke with residents, a pattern emerged. Many recalled a Santa figure nearby in the weeks leading up to Christmas. Some remembered waving. Others remembered being watched. None had realized what they were seeing. The evidence showed he wasn't hunting victims. He was studying routines. And the list confirmed something critical. There was no single target. There would have been multiple victims, multiple locations, a moving crime. The last piece of evidence came from the tunnel. A small bag recovered near the collapse point contained a folding map, a train schedule cache separated into labeled envelopes. Each envelope was marked with a town name. Christmas Eve wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The blizzard didn't just stop one crime. It stopped a series. By the end of the investigation, detectives reached a single conclusion. This case was not solved by instinct. It was solved by details. A glove, a list, a footprint in snow. Every piece mattered, because together they revealed a truth that still unsettles investigators. Elias Northwood was not caught because he made a mistake. He was caught because the weather forced one. The evidence stopped him, but the story didn't end there. If you found this investigation compelling, please take a moment to like the video. It helps these stories reach the audience they deserve. And if you want to see how this case concludes, from the courtroom to the lasting impact left behind, consider subscribing to the channel. In Part 3, we'll examine what happened next. Chapter 7. Trial, Sentencing, and Aftermath. Final chapter. The Christmas That Nearly Wasn't. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in Part 3.
Taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, calling